Your doctor looked at your nails and said it is just aging, nothing to worry about. That answer is not wrong, it is just incomplete in a way that could actually cost you, because most doctors spend 15 seconds looking at your nails before moving on to whatever you actually booked the appointment for. Vertical ridges on your nails are one of the most overlooked diagnostic signals your body produces. Not always, not automatically, but often enough that dismissing them as a cosmetic issue is the kind of lazy medicine that leaves real problems undetected for years, compounding quietly in the background while you get told everything looks fine. Here is what those ridges are actually telling you, who specifically needs to pay attention, and the one nutritional mechanism that most people with this symptom have never once been tested for. Start with what the ridge actually is, not what it looks like, but what it physically represents. Your nail grows from a structure called the nail matrix, which sits just beneath the skin at the base of your nail. The matrix produces cells called keratinocytes, which flatten, harden, and stack forward to form the nail plate. When that process runs smoothly and consistently, the surface is flat. When something disrupts the rate or quality of production, you get ridging, and the disruption is baked into the structure as it grows, which is why you cannot file it away permanently and have it stay gone. A vertical ridge forms when the matrix produces cells unevenly across its width. One column grows slightly faster or thicker than the adjacent one, and over time that differential stacks up into a visible line running from cuticle to tip. New growth keeps reproducing it. Here is the distinction almost nobody explains correctly. Horizontal ridges, called bow lines, are a sign of acute disruption. Something hit hard enough to temporarily halt nail growth altogether. Serious illness, chemotherapy, extreme physical stress. The groove runs side to side because growth stopped, then resumed. Vertical ridges work differently. They are a pattern, not a single event. Whatever is causing them is ongoing, happening right now, every day as your nail grows. You're not looking at a record of something that passed. You're looking at a live readout of what your body is doing at this moment. That changes the clinical significance entirely. Now for the mechanism most people are walking around with and do not know about. Iron deficiency is the single underdiagnosed driver of vertical nail ridges in otherwise healthy adults. Not full anemia, not a number low enough to trigger an alert on your results page. The problem is that most labs use 12 to 15 nanograms per milliliter for their lower reference limit for ferritin, which means a result of 20 or 25 shows up as within range, even though clinical guidelines from the American Academy of Family Physicians and the Merck manual flag anything below 30 as iron deficient. The nail matrix is one of the most metabolically active tissues in your body, turning over constantly, and that process is iron dependent at every stage, from DNA replication in dividing cells to the enzyme activity that drives keratin cross-linking. When intracellular iron drops below the level required for optimal matrix function, the output becomes inconsistent, the cells stack unevenly, and the ridge forms. This is not a theory. It's the same mechanism behind the classic spoon nail, called koilonychia, which appears at more severe iron deficiency. The nail curves inward because the matrix cannot produce structurally sound keratin at the rate it needs to. Both ridging and koilonychia trace back to the same deficiency. Koilonychia just appears when depletion has progressed further. Ridging may be the earlier warning your body sends, which means if you catch it and act now, you may be catching the problem before it gets worse. The reason this goes undetected for so long is specific. Most standard iron panels only check serum iron and hemoglobin. By the time hemoglobin drops, you've been iron depleted at the tissue level for months already. Ferritin, which measures stored iron, is the number that tells you what's actually available to your cells, and it's not always ordered unless you ask for it by name. If you have vertical ridges and you've never had a ferritin test, that's your next step. Not a topical treatment, not a supplement protocol, a blood draw that costs less than most supplements and gives you an actual answer. Iron is not the only mechanism worth knowing. 3 others can drive the same pattern, and the intervention changes completely depending on which one applies to you. The first is protein turnover rate. Nail keratin is a structural protein, and your matrix can only produce it as fast as your dietary protein and amino acid availability allows. Chronic low protein intake, not starvation level, but just chronically below what your body needs for full tissue maintenance, slows matrix output and creates irregular cell stacking. The ridge pattern in these cases tends to be multiple shallow lines distributed across several nails rather than 1 or 2 pronounced ridges concentrated on a single nail. If you are eating under 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight consistently and you have that pattern, that is likely the mechanism behind it. The second is thyroid dysfunction. Both hypothyroidism and hyperthyroidism affect matrix activity, but through completely different pathways. Hypothyroidism slows the entire cellular cycle. Growth rate drops, output becomes uneven, ridges form alongside dryness and brittleness, and the nail grows slowly, thins over time, and breaks easily. Hyperthyroidism accelerates cell turnover to the point of inconsistency, which also creates ridging, but is typically accompanied by softening and separation at the free edge of the nail rather than brittleness. These 2 presentations look similar in isolation, but the surrounding symptoms are usually distinct enough to differentiate them. If your ridges appeared alongside changes in energy, weight, temperature regulation, or hair loss, thyroid function is worth checking, and the standard TSH alone is not enough. You need free Th3 and free Th4 to get the actual picture. The third is gut absorption. You can eat adequate iron and protein and still develop deficiency-driven ridges if absorption is compromised at the level of the gut. Conditions like chronically low stomach acid, celiac disease, or ongoing low-grade gut inflammation reduce the bioavailability of nutrients even when dietary intake looks completely fine on paper. This explains why some people supplement aggressively for months and see zero change in their ridges. The problem is not intake, it is uptake, and no amount of supplementation fixes a delivery problem at the absorption level. Here is the part most people never hear, not because anyone is hiding it, but because the appointment is 15 minutes long and your nails are not the chief complaint. A single vertical ridge that has been there for years without changing is almost certainly not a problem. It may be genetic, it may be a scar in the matrix from an old injury you do not remember. The matrix has memory. Damage it once and it produces a slightly altered column of cells indefinitely. That ridge is structural, not systemic, and does not need investigation. What actually warrants attention is a different presentation entirely. Multiple ridges appearing or deepening over a period of months, ridges accompanied by brittleness or splitting at the tip, or white spots that are not from injury, or ridges arriving alongside other symptoms, fatigue that does not resolve with sleep, cold intolerance, hair thinning at the temples or crown, poor recovery from exercise, or mood changes that feel physical rather than situational. Any of those combinations in someone who is vegan, a frequent blood donor, an athlete in heavy training, or someone who has recently gone through a surgery or a prolonged period of serious stress, that is the presentation where the ridge is a signal and not noise. The labs that actually answer the question are not the default panel most people receive. Ferritin specifically, not just serum iron. A complete thyroid panel including free Th3 and free Th4, not just TSH. A comprehensive metabolic panel to check liver and kidney markers because both affect matrix output. And if gut issues are anywhere in the picture, a tissue transglutaminase antibody test to screen for celiac, which is substantially more common than most people realize and frequently goes undiagnosed for a decade or more. The nail is a window. It grows slowly enough that what you can see on its surface represents weeks of biology unfolding underneath, which means the pattern on your nails right now is a record of what your body has been doing for the past several months. Most people respond to this one of 2 ways. Either they dismiss it because a doctor once told them it was normal, or they search online, find a list of 40 possible causes, and spiral into worst-case thinking. Neither response changes anything.
The useful response is targeted, a specific blood panel, an honest review of dietary intake and stress load over the past 6 months, and the understanding that if something systemic is driving this, it's been building quietly for a long time. That's actually the good news. Gradual means correctable. Nutrient deficiencies are among the most reversible conditions in medicine when you identify the right one and address it at the source. The matrix recovers quickly when it gets what it needs. New growth begins at the base, works its way forward, and within 3 to 6 months of fixing the actual cause, the surface clears as the evidence grows out. Your nails do not lie. Most people just never learn what they're saying.